Video 6, Burnout, a work-life balance. Hey guys, just a quick video today, trying to make these a bit shorter so people can actually watch them. Today is the last day of a much needed week off, so I decided to touch on why it was needed and why, if you're in a similar position that I've been in, why it's important that you take all the time you need to as well. For a lot of workers, the coming weeks are going to be the most mentally and physically taxing time of year. It can possibly also be the most financially rewarding, but you need to really make sure that it's worth it, that the cost of work isn't too high. 2 weeks ago, on the Tuesday, the week before my week off, I, for the first time, took a mental health day. On the Monday, I came to work after my 2 days off and was instantly angry. I felt like my pile of work just kept growing and growing. I was getting no support with my duties, and it felt to me like everyone else's attitude and work output kept putting more and more pressure on me, giving me more work with much shorter deadlines. It felt like every person I would speak to, every conversation I had would end with them making an error and it was up to me to solve it ASAP, putting my own duties on the back burner, despite them reaching their breaking point. I'm not saying that it was necessarily the case, I'm just saying that's where my mind was going. This made me more and more irritable. I was very short and rude with people, very sarcastic and very unpleasant. I didn't even realize this until it got pointed out to me by my manager, and I started seeing that I was becoming quite the pain in the ass, which, of course, through the wonders of anxiety, started to make me freak out even more. So suddenly, every single task that fell to me freaked me out more and more, which made me act out more and more, which made me feel guilty more and more. It got to the point that I started to feel sick, and this was all before midday. I knew I had the week off coming up, and on the outside looking in, it's easy to say, tough it out, just gonna make it through the week. And about halfway through Monday, that's where I was, that's what I was thinking. Until I had one final phone call that at the time felt a little too difficult, and I just had to take a quick walk outside. And it's funny, the moment I stepped outside, I instantly felt better. The weight was lifted and I felt myself returning back to earth. Until I had to go back in and instantly felt sick again. It was then I realised that the week off couldn't wait and I needed a day off to collect myself. So I was talking to my fiancée Kat. I had made the decision to take the next day off. And honestly, once I made that thought to have a day off with no requirements, no expectations, just a simple day off, I instantly felt better. This isn't the first time that I felt this way. I touched on it with my mental health video about how this attitude of always putting work over my health first at the beginning of the year, ironically, almost made me lose my job, because I became so irritable, so hard to work with, and that combined with the frustration of the work that I was doing, I became a shitty worker with an even worse attitude who never asked for help or let it be known that I was in a bind. So suddenly I was in a position where I had to justify why I actually still was this good worker. So I took the day off. I was 100% upfront and honest with my manager when I called up sick the next day. And it's funny because after all I've been through and after all that's happened to me in the last couple of years, I knew I was doing the right thing and I had to do this. But I was still nervous about making the call, as if it wasn't a good enough reason to take the day off at this busy time of year. But to his credit, he knew I was in a rough spot the day before, he was very supportive, and he even ended the call with, take as much time as you need, which honestly, what felt amazing to hear. And wouldn't you know it, I had the laziest, nicest day off. I returned to work on Wednesday, still feeling a little bit skittish, wondering if I should have taken another day off, but the support I got from the entire team was so humbling that it made the rest of the week easier. And sure enough, by the end of that week, I knew I was starting my annual leave, my holidays, and the moment I walked out, I felt great. I do know I've got a lot of work to come back to, but at the same time, I'm ready to take it on because I feel amazing. It's the best I've felt in such a long time. So suddenly, again, I realised that it wasn't so much work that was freaking me out, that it was the way I was handling it that was doing this to me. And this isn't the first time that got called to attention. I mean, when I was seeing the Psychologist, we discovered that the bulk of my anxiety came from a very poor work-life balance. I always felt at breaking point, so he would give me a few tips which really helped me get control of it. So what I mean by that is, say this is my breaking point, I was permanently in like this spot here, which meant a small thing which was barely a blip on the radar normally would take me over the edge immediately because I was never able to lower my stress level down. So one of the first tips he gave me, which was probably the one that made the most instant effect, was my time spent thinking and worrying about work. Now, I'm not saying don't care about your job and don't think about the job, not that at all. But I would basically get up extra early to get to work extra early, and I spend the whole drive to work thinking about work, thinking about what was going on, to the point that I was basically committing an extra hour and a half of my day in the morning to work. I'll then hang back really, really late every single day without fail and spend the entire drive home thinking about work. Now, doing this every now and then is obviously welcome, it's encouraged, it's important to do a good job, but when I did it every single time, I realized in a 9-hour day, I was probably giving work, in no exaggeration, 14 hours of my attention. So the way he helped me get over that was to simply say, on the drive home, pick a particular point. So halfway in the drive, I'd pass a particular shopping centre. And when you get to that shopping centre to drive home, stop thinking about work. Easier said than done, I know, but once I made that conscious effort to start thinking about other things when I got to that shop, it just became the furthest thing from my mind. And that right away started to make a difference. As time went on, that point where I could switch my mind off got closer and closer to work, to the point now that the moment my day is done, unless it's really urgent and requires attention, I don't think about the place, and I right away stop freaking out over things, and I'm ready to take on the next day. I'm no longer waking up dreading that day. I really started to understand how to control my mindset, and suddenly I was no longer living here's breaking point and I was living here. I was living way down here, which right away made everything easier. Now I'm going to quickly finish up with a quick shout out to Beyond Blue, because on the 20th of November, which was Go Home on Time Today Day, they dropped 5 really simple points that should go without saying, but also really need to be said. Number 1, go home on time. Simply enough, make sure when your day is done, your day is done. Don't overcommit too much of your personal life because you don't get that time back. There was a guy when I used to work with back in the day that was, I say, notorious for rocking up the moment his day began and finished the moment his day finished. And everyone else that worked with him would get really frustrated at him because they felt like he wasn't helping the team, he wasn't committing anymore. End of the day, the store ran perfectly fine and he did a more than adequate job. And looking back on it now, I wish I had that mindset back then. Number 2, allocate time to do things you enjoy. You only get one life to live, and you don't want to spend that time thinking, I wish I spent more time doing this and that. Number 3, which is similar to number 1, take a lunch break. I, for years and years and years, was the guy that would either work through my lunch break, or when I would get lunch, I would eat in a position that I was always reachable so I can keep doing work, because in my mind I was getting ahead of things, getting more and more done. End of the day, I do know that the work is always going to be there, whether I put in extra hours or not, so do it occasionally, but take your breaks, just rest, allow your mind to reset. If you work for 8 hours a day and you get a half an hour break, make sure you get a half-hour break, otherwise your brain is working 8 hours non-stop and that just gets to you. Number 4, take your holiday leave. Goes without saying, you get time off, take it. And 5, set realistic deadlines. I dropped a saying on that day which I really stand by, and I really let it be known that if the work you're assigned to do can't be done in the allotted time you're given, that's not a commentary or a judgment on the worker, that is a commentary on the work. It's not the worker that needs to change, it's the work that needs to change. Finally, very, very important, just take care of yourself. Make sure you got the time to do what you need to do, and the moment you feel stressed out, it will never look bad if you tell your work, hey, I'm struggling, I need a day, I need some time. They will support you, and if they don't, that says more about the job than it does about you. Thanks, guys.